Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to the MineWarp podcast. This is, of course, the podcast where we talk about, where we talk with investors and innovators and implementers of mining technologies and all things new and interesting in the world of mining. And today we are talking to an old acquaintance and business friend of mine, Gary Lane. Gary is currently president of the SAIMM, or for those that don't know, that's the South African Institute of Mining and Metallurgy. And he's also a director at VUMA Collaborations, but I'll let him tell you more about that. He started his career back in 1997 around there, and I think we met, Gary, when you were managing director of SAIMM Analytics, more or less 2009, 2010, is that right?
That's right, MP. I think, we met around that time. It was when I was trying to build a new mine planning solution to change the way that we do mine planning in underground hard rock mining. Many years ago.
Many moons ago, indeed. Gary, so just give us a bit of a background, maybe of your history, maybe a little bit of personal. Where did you grow up? Where did you study, and so on? And then, how did your career get you to where you are today?
Okay, now a really good question. It's always nice to reflect on where it started. So, born in the Eastern Cape, but moved to Johannesburg when I was still sort of 6-7 years old, and then we spent the rest of my time in Johannesburg. I wasn't planning to get into mining. I remember just December holidays when I was in standard 9 or grade 11, and I needed to get a bursary. So I got a little booklet from Wits University and wrote 25 letters and got an Anglo-American call and had to go to head office there in town and got awarded an Anglo-American scholarship to study civil engineering, of all things. So I wasn't mining, I was civil engineering. But very fortunate, because I then spent the next 10 years of my career at Anglo-American building mines all around Africa. I hit Anglo at the time when there was a lot of investment going into capital projects, so an incredible 10 years. I then did an MBA, and that opened my eyes to the fact that I actually could do other stuff than just engineering. So I went back to Anglo and said, well, I want to get into business side of Anglo, and they couldn't accommodate me. At that stage, you had to be a mining engineer, you had to get a blasting certificate, mine overseers, become a GM of a mine to get into the executive of Anglo. So I left, and I've done multiple startups since then. The first one really focused on mine optimization, really advanced forward-looking scenario planning, try to build a new mine planning solution to change the way we do mine planning. And then after 15 years, got out of that business and really dabbled a little bit in a tech play for about a year and a half, and then got involved with VUMA. For me, VUMA answered the last piece of the or one of the pieces of the puzzle that I've been battling with for the first portion of my career, and that was we implement the most incredible technology in mining, and yet we don't add value. So VUMA is a one piece of the puzzle around people. So and probably more about that as we continue in this podcast, MP.
It's interesting that you say VUMA is around people. I also listened to your inauguration speech. When you were inaugurated as president of the SAIMM, and one of the first points that you made there was around moving to a people-centric operating model. So this sounds like it's a real issue that you see in the industry out there.
Yeah, no, MP, it's interesting. We started off 10 years ago, my colleague and I, in this journey, and our hypothesis was, and we did a lot of investigation of what was being done in Toyota, in the car industry, because we saw a massive improvement in productivity happening in the motor industry, especially Toyota and led by Toyota, and a decline in mining. And the hypothesis was that we didn't know how to effectively manage a complex integrated system, value stream, drill, blast, load, haul. So we started off with, how do we teach the skills to effectively manage and optimize that complex dynamic value stream. All right.
Okay.
And that sort of from there, it's actually built on and built on and built on, because what's very interesting, you can go and teach somebody all the business improvement skills to optimize a value stream, and you send those people back into an operation and you'll yield no improvement. And the reason you don't yield any improvement is that only one piece of a complex organization where the GM has a certain way of thinking and operating based on his historical context. The engineering manager does things how he believes. So you've got egos, you've got legacy, you've got a effort-driven organization, and you don't yield any improvement. Now, what's interesting is the hypothesis was a mining challenge. I've been very fortunate now to have been working all around the world, and it's actually not just a problem now for what we're seeing in mining. It's actually a global issue across industries. We see the same behavior everywhere we go, which has been quite an incredible eye-opener for us.
Yeah, that's so. This discussion about value tree thinking, value stream thinking, it's interesting that just last week my previous podcast was with Corné Azel at AMC Consultants. I know that you know her as well.
I know Corné very well.
Yeah. And we also talked about, value streams and, how you can, obviously you have to go deep in specific activity areas to find if there are things wrong. But if you don't have a stream view of your organization from kind of end to end, then you can be the one doing harm, even if you improve any given activity. So I find it very interesting that you give so much attention to that part of understanding the business as a process. Maybe that's a bit of a holdover from mine planning, where you have to look at the business as a continuous process, don't you?
It's fundamental. I mean, I think the problem is that we operate in silos. Our performance metrics are in silos, and we try and optimize our area of influence. And if you don't understand the whole system, I mean, it's fundamentally saying it's systems thinking, top down, understand the system, find out what's constraining the system, okay? And mine planning, it's critical as an input into understanding that system's performance and capacity and capability.
Yeah.
So it's the fundamental starting point of almost anything you need to be doing, actually.
So if we bring this to to your work at the SAIMM, obviously the SAIMM is an organization with a wide ambit, I should say. If I think of the mission, which I just looked up, it's to render high quality professional services to its members by keeping abreast of technological developments in the mining and metallurgical sectors. So, I mean, that is quite wide, because it's not just technology, it's also about how does that work in the context of this country and in the context of a working mine and in the context of the type of labor issues that you may have, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you bring the work that you're doing at Vuma and have done so far in your career into the focus that you now have in the SAIMM?
Okay, I mean that's a really, really good question, MP, because having experienced now organizations all around the world and across industries, and picking up that most of what I've seen is very much effort-driven organizations where people are working very, very hard, but nothing's been orchestrated. I'm applying that to the SAIMM holistically, saying we've got over 20 people that run the SAIMM that are incredible. They work incredible hours delivering amazing work to the industry. But we've got to build an operating model again that is repeatable, reliable, so we can scale it. How do we consistently deliver value to our members in the industry continually in standardized ways of work? Are we clear on what our strategy is? What is our value proposition to our customer? Who are our customer? How do we then deliver that What are the roles in the organization? How do we measure performance? So all of that. So I'm basically focusing on building a people-centric operating model for SIMM with one sole purpose: is how do we then scale the SIMM to even be more influential in achieving its objectives for the industry and its members. So, I mean, the SIMM in essence is it's the stewardship of professional capability and technical integrity. That's fundamentally what it's about. Now, I'm a systems thinker.
To say that again, the stewardship of
professional capability and technical integrity. That's fundamentally what it's about. Okay, and there's a lot of stuff we do, and I can unpack all of the things that we as SIMM do. I mean, I've been involved in the Institute now for 25 years, and I wasn't even aware of the significance, the impact, and the diverse set of work we actually do to the industry, which I'm sure a lot of people aren't even aware of themselves. So we'll unpack some of that as we proceed in this podcast, and we'll have a good discussion about it.
Yeah, I mean, when we talked earlier, just to kind of put our heads together about what topics would be useful to touch on, you talked a lot about that custodian of professionalism, I should say, and what it means, for example, to be a mining engineer, or what it means to have specific engineering roles in the mining industry. But I guess it's a little bit wider than just mining. SIMM is currently doing a lot of work around the establishment of standard and governance and so on in that area, isn't it?
100%. I mean, being a systems thinker and understanding value streams, SIMM, if you think about it, that professional pipeline is actually just a system. It's a value stream. So we have an industry that needs the right skills at the right time, now and into the future. We've got tertiary and postgrad education. We've got to make sure we're attracting the right, first of all, we've got to be attracting the right skills in to the mining pipeline.
Yep.
And we're not just talking mining and metallurgy. I think there's that misconception around SIMM. It is all professionals for the industry. So we're talking about mining, metallurgy, electrical, civil engineers. I mean, you've got a civil engineer now as the president of SIMM. Our current YPC, Young Professionals Council chair lady, is actually an industrial engineer. So it's attracting all of those skills into mining. And remembering, we're competing now. We're competing against banking. We're competing against all the high-tech industries. We need mechatronics engineers. So you've got to feed them in to the system. We've got to make sure our curriculums are aligned with what the industry needs. We've then got to look at...
Sorry, go ahead.
And we've then got to look at professional registration, and then the continuing professional development. So we're building continual capability to meet that industry needs. And we've got to keep that system working as the stewardship of that system ultimately. And
now I know you do a lot of work with youth as well, the Young Professionals Council and so on, as is SIMM. And then, you're working on standards and reporting, for example, contributing to or supporting SAIMM codes and so on. But what is the mandate? I mean, is it a professional body that you have to belong to and that you have to subscribe to the standards if you're going to be working as an engineer in mining, or is it merely, it's a great idea to be an ethical engineer. Let me join this organization and I'll be a better one.
Okay, I mean, that's a really, really good question. Belonging to the SIMM is voluntary. It's a voluntary association, all right? But there are there's a few things changing into the future, and let me unpack that a little bit. Because we're the custodians of the SAIMM codes, which is the reporting of minerals requirements into the JSE and listed companies and statutory requirements, being a member of SIMM is a requirement around a competent person signing off on that. So that's when SIMM plays an important role. Also, most other disciplines, or not disciplines, but jobs, doctors, health practitioners, lawyers, have all got professional bodies that look after the interests of that professional body around ethics, professionalism, capability, and all of that. So engineering's never really had a compulsory requirement to register as a professional.
Okay.
Engineering Council of South Africa, which we're a voluntary association, is changing that. Couple of reasons. One is really to protect the interests of the public and environment and economics. Legal accountability. If something goes wrong, who's legally accountable and who's signed off on engineering work? Professional standards and international best practice. So the Engineering Council of South Africa is gazetted now and they've basically initiated a thing called identification of engineering work, where they've identified what work is requiring a registered engineer to sign off on. And then it's going to have a massive implication for the industry. You'll find a lot of engineers haven't been registered. Traditionally, civil and electrical engineers had to be registered to operate or to work because of the impact it had on public and safety. But the same is applying across all industries. So SAIMM as a voluntary association supports what X is trying to achieve. And importantly, all the work we do to support our members is around getting professionally registered as quick as possible. And we're supporting the industry in that regard. And then you're continuing professional development, because you've got to then continue different programs, work, get experience, and continue to develop yourself to keep that registration. And it's a 5-year cycle. There's a lot of work, but all of the work SAIMM does for our members will support and maintain your professional registration.
Yeah. So if you compare maybe the work of the SAIMM with the Canadian Institute of Mining or the AusIMM, how similar are they?
Okay, I was very privileged. I've actually met all the heads of all of those other institutes.
Right.
They were here in Johannesburg in July. So just before I took over as president, I met all of them: Australia, Canada, the US, the UK, I think Kenya as well. All deal with they're very, very similar. All deal with the same similar challenges that we do. They've all got councils or boards. So we're all looking at achieving the same things in the industry for our respective countries with very similar mandates. Structurally, some are constitutions, others have charters, depending on the legalities of their region. What we have seen is some of them have still just got a traditional president who's an industry individual. Some have got professional CEOs now, so they've really driven it towards a far more business-based institution that's got a proper board of directors. I mean, in essence, a council is a board. It's called a council, but it has the same governance responsibilities. But a lot of collaboration between SAIMM and the other institutes globally. And we're not unique in any of our challenges around member-based organizations.
And now, when you talk about those members then, and about the standards, you talked about accountants and doctors and so on, that they have professional bodies. Of course, there are XREs there, but now you want to lift that. And also, if you establish a higher level of accountability and of registration and so on, then that has to be brought into an industry that isn't acting like that at the moment. So how do you do that without, just blowing up the system?
Yeah, look, that's a very good question. What's interesting is what I'm seeing is most of the industry isn't aware of what's happening with regards to what EXA is now gazetted. I've actually going to be going and seeing the president of the Engineering Council of South Africa to have this conversation, because a lot of the industry is not aware. It has been gazetted. There was a deadline given, which is passed.
Okay. Wow.
Because it basically means that we've got to relook at all the different levels of work, because even down to a mine planner, if they need to sign off on a mine plan, because a mine plan has massive implications of safety because of the design.
Absolutely.
The mine planner, if is not registered as a professional technologist, technician, or engineer, will need a supervisor that is registered to sign off. So it means that levels of work are going to have to be mapped to engineering registration requirements. Now, in the mining industry, you've got two different sort of regulatory environments. You've got what's coming through the Mine Health and Safety Act around competencies, which is your ticket, blasting, mine overseers, tickets, and all of that. So to perform certain roles, you need a ticket. But what it also means, you're now going to have to map engineering requirements against that. So certain roles will need a ticket from a mine and health and safety DMRE perspective, and the other is going to mean a ticket as an engineering capability or engineering competence. So it has big impact for the industry, and it will have to change into the future based on what has now been gazetted in the Professionals Engineering Act.
Right. Okay. So there's this gazetted reality, or I should say requirement, and then there's the reality. But there will be some time of implementing this and support for mines. Do mines then, as it stands at the moment, are they exposed to higher risks of, I should say, levels of risk right now, while they are not maybe fully compliant with that expectation? Or is there some time for them to get their house in order?
I actually don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I don't understand. I'm not clear, and this is why I'm going to go into the Engineering Council, is when will it become compulsory and that there will be some form of censure? I think there's going to have to, and look, realistically, it's going to take 5 years to push that. We are seeing some of our corporate partners now asking us to accelerate the registration process of some of their existing engineers. So we're going to be assisting with that, mentoring. It's about a 9-month, look, to register as a professional engineer or professional, the 11 competencies, which means you have to have done those 11 competencies. There's a lot of engineers that meet all of those. They've just got to go through the process of registration,
right?
Which is about a 9-month process. We're going to facilitate and help that process.
All right. Well, that sounds really exciting. I'm sure there will be, lots of excitement and lots of pushback, as with any other such,
No, you can imagine, someone who's been operating as an engineer for 40 years, who's not registered. He's got a degree, not registered. And, that's where now X is saying, well, we need registered engineers. There's going to be pushback, but the reality is we do need to lift our engineering profession to the point that we are governed around the integrity and capability of our engineers and accountability. It's a good thing that we support.
Yeah. I always look for something a little bit contentious or controversial. So I've got a question for you. Are you ready?
Depends on what the question is, MP. Let's see if I can answer it. Don't put me on the spot.
Geologists, are they engineers or not?
Well, okay, and this is part of the conversation I want to have, because geologists are classified as scientists and not engineers. Okay, they actually have their own professional body, SAT, NESP, which you become a professional in that body, not Engineering Council of South Africa. So they are professionals, but here's where it becomes interesting. If you go through the identification of engineering work, certain mineral valuation work has been classified as engineering work in the identification of engineering work. But we have geologists performing and signing off on that work. So now we have this conflict, which I think will need to be resolved. So it is a challenge. Look, geologists can belong to SAIMM as well, but they can't be registered as engineers. So it's something that will need to be addressed and will have to be unpacked as we move forward in this transition to professionalizing the engineering profession.
I asked the question only, tongue in the cheek a little bit, but also because so many geologists are involved not only in, finding material, but in the planning phases, and deeply in the planning phases. And so I guess, as you say, there's going to have to be some process there. And many of them have made a whole career in mine planning and design 100%. And all the other, activities that go along with that. I want to move on just a little bit to something else that you touched on, and that is that people-centric operating model. You talked about skills and capability, and then you talked about an operating model structure, where you link performance measures and structured management routines and workflows and feedback loops that help deliver consistent outcomes. Do you think mines are good at doing that, or are they kind of managing the mine this way because they've managed the mine this way? Is that really evolving? Is transformational leadership really taking place so that the mine of 5 years from now will look different from the mine today?
Look, it's a really good question. I mean, just to kind of look back historically and then talk about the future. What I can tell you and this is not just in mining, I'm talking about multinationals. Most of the organizations we go into are very effort-driven. A lot of people working very hard, reacting to stuff happening, responding to emails, deadlines. It's not orchestrated in a proper, repeatable way. And role clarity is not there. Performance measures at the right levels of work are not there. And I'm not saying it's mine in particular. It is across industries at different levels of challenge. Okay. So, if you think about getting an organization, I mean, planned orchestrated work is more efficient than ad hoc work, unplanned work. The response to the fact that we're not coping is hire more people. So you end up with more and more people doing more and more ad hoc admin work, and it's inefficient. Proper, structured, orchestrated work with the right people doing the right work at the right time in the monthly, weekly drum beats is efficient work. In fact, you could argue that the output of that work is probably 50% higher from a same size organization. And you've got people that have a sense of purpose. They talk, all of that stuff. Now, into the future,
links back to attracting talent and so on.
100%. Because if you go into an effort-driven organization, I mean, the symptoms are very clear. I don't know my role. I don't know what a good day looks like. I get pulled from pillar to post. I'm demotivated. I'm burnt out. All of those. And that's the real reality we see in most organizations. So orchestrated opera, and it's hard because people come to work and they deal with the reality of what's hit them from the emails and the phone calls and the reality on the ground. But into the future now, what's interesting, an operating model is really saying, what are management and work routines? What's our levels of work? And how do people integrate into that whole thing to make a person perform at their best? Because everyone comes to work to perform, but they're sitting in an organization disillusioned because you can't get anything done because there's red tape and people don't do what they say and there's a lot of admin processes. Into the future now, what's very interesting is AI is going to replace some of those elements of operating model. Because there are roles in an org. Now, AI is not going to replace people. We don't have to be worried about that. Okay, I can tell you right now. But it will replace certain roles. Okay,
skills.
There are going to be other skills required, but it will replace it. So there are potential functions that will always need people, but certain parts of that process can be replaced by an AI agent. Where you don't need people doing some of the manual admin stuff, collating data, all of that. So you're going to find a far more now. What's important, most organizations haven't designed efficient work processes. You can't throw AI into an inefficient, unmapped work process. You've got to literally design it from the ground up. So, the future of work is going to look very different. The operating model of the future is going to look very different. We're entering some very exciting times. I mean, the rate of change has accelerated to almost weeks now with the advent of AI, which is incredible. I mean, it's very exciting times.
It's almost, you hear it every now and again, but I still love the expression that, change has never been this fast and it won't ever be this slow again.
Look, I mean, AI has been the fastest adopted technology in history. I mean, it's something like 82% adoption in like 2 years. I mean, it's magnitudes faster than any other technology ever in the world.
I just watched a documentary earlier about the adoption of, or the implementation of self-driving taxis in the USA. And the question was asked of a PhD student, to what extent are people ready to actually get into a self-driving car, never mind whether or not it can do the job. Let's assume that it does the job safely and efficiently and so on. Are people ready to do that? And the result was a resounding yes, absolutely. Sure, there are going to be people here and there that don't want to do it, but the level of comfort that people have with adopting new technology is way, way higher than I think we expected. And in addition to that, it's not only level of comfort, but as younger generations come into the business, it's also a level of expectation.
Yes.
I expect that the business should be able to support me with these kinds of, cognitive tools. And I expect that I should be able to call my wife on WhatsApp while I'm operating a loader, somewhere. Well, maybe not while I'm operating, but while I'm in the loader,
Yes.
taking a break or something like that. And the everywhereness of technology in our everyday life, from rings and watches and whatever else that tells us how we're doing, is just becoming ubiquitous, and everyone expects that to happen. And if the organization does not allow that, then it becomes the kind of organization where I don't want to work.
Yeah, look, and this is such an important point. I mean, we've got to attract different skills into mining into the future. We've got to attract those new skills that have expectation around digital and how work is. And if we don't adapt as a mining industry to accommodate that, we're not going to attract the skills we require. We're going to need data science skills, AI skills, mechatronics. They have expectations. They're going to end up in a air-conditioned office sitting in Google or in a financial services in a beautiful leafy suburb versus going onto a mine. We've got to attract those skills, and we've got to adapt, and we've got to meet the expectations of our next level of workforce that's entering mining into the future. So, some interesting times ahead. We've got to think about it strategically. If you think about it, this is why that pipeline we speak about right from it probably even starts with high school. We've got to be attracting the right skills into mining. Make it sexy that they want to get into mining, open up the opportunities for them to see that, as a mechanical engineer, where else would you be able to be exposed to such advanced mechanical technology, versus other industries. So that's what we've got to be able to do to attract those skills.
So we've talked a lot about industry, and we've talked a lot about technical things and so on, and that's brought us to the end of our time, unfortunately. But I do want to ask you a little bit more about yourself. When you're not doing all of this work in the industry and doing work at Vuma, etc., what does Gary Lane do to keep you sane?
Yeah, so look, for me, to keep me sane is I love mountain biking. So that is where I get on a mountain bike, I'm out in the bush. It unlocks my brain. I can solve whatever challenges are dealing with me. It just happens naturally. And I've seen some incredible areas in South Africa. And when I go overseas on projects, I've ridden around the world. I'm going to hire a mountain bike. So that's really where I do my thinking, relaxing, and I'm out in nature. So
it's not the greatest place to go onto autopilot, though.
No, but it's interesting. For me, I'm not on autopilot yet. My brain is actually just sitting, thinking, solving problems. So it's actually, if there's something tricky for me to solve, or I need to do a complex webinar or presentation, I will formulate that whole presentation in my head over maybe 2 or 3 mountain bike rides. And then I know what I'm going to say, and I just go and draft the presentation. So that's how I do it.
Sounds like a great plan. Gary, thanks a lot for your time, and thanks for all the wisdom. And also thank you for the work that you're doing, both as a president at the SAIMM, and of course as organization there. Clearly lots and lots of good work already happening, and lots of potential of good work to be done into the future, because our country needs it.
Fantastic, MB. Thank you for the invite. Really appreciate it. And any other time you would like to bring me on, just reach out. All right.